loading snacks.
What to do, snackers, snackettes, and snack X's? It's your boy Gage. I'm here with jokes, and it is time
Yo,
of Spoiler Boys.
spoiler boys.
Yeah, we are here to spoil episode 7 of Agatha All Along, which is cruising right along on Disney Plus. Jokes, how we feeling after this episode?
Feeling really good.
Are you? Why? Why?
Mm.
Why so good? Why are you feeling so good?
Um, with the way the story has been going, like I think it was I don't want to say a slow start, but it was just kind of understanding what it was that we were getting with the show. But as the gears started turning, started moving along, puzzle pieces starting to come into place, more questions being asked, but the way that we were getting to certain places started feeling real good about it. Um, I like that all of the characters are getting with the rituals and everything, their trials are getting their light of day. Um, and I thought this last episode it hit on all cylinders when it came time for that. So I'm in really good shape where the show is heading right now.
I dig it. This episode answers a few questions we had at the end of the last episode in terms of um what happened to our other two witches that got chucked into the muck, if you will. Um and so we get an answer for that, right? We have um they somehow sank through the dirt into the
Through
underground. Whatever. It's the witch's road, bro. Like, you know what I mean? What are you gonna do, guy? And I'm gonna tell you what, man. This is probably the most confusing episode of television I have ever watched in my entire life. It is all over the place, and truthfully, respectfully, it should be that way.
hmm
It's
I will admit it did. It took me maybe like halfway through to realize what was actually going on as we were kind of explaining. And then once we finally got that answer, I was like, okay, now I because I will give you that. Up to a point, I was kind of like, why the hell is this going in this order that we're doing right now? Because it was a little weird at first, and I was like, damn it, we dropping the ball. What's going on for a second?
well, I mean, look, we get Billy William. Walking with Agatha, both kind of on edge. Not, he doesn't really trust her. Understandable.
Rightfully so.
Um, she appears, in my opinion, to have some fear of his power. Understandable. Um, and there are questions to each other about like what's at the end of the road and what they're actually intending to get or to find at the end of the road. And when they come across the castle that is their trial, for me personally, immediately I was like, "Oh, this don't make sense. This isn't either one of their trials. Like, this isn't right." 'Cause, I mean, like Agatha clearly already had her trial, right?
Right.
So, like, this would absolutely, if it's going to be the two of them, it would have to be Billy's, and this doesn't
hmm
make any sense.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But when they walk in, they go in kind of gung ho, recognize, okay, this is a tarot, table set up, and so he immediately begins to say things that make it seem like it makes sense that it would be his trial, right? That this must be a thing for him. Um, and they make a go of it, like, all right, man, let's play these cards, and then these swords start falling out of the ceiling. Um, when it gets a little tricky, there's some pressure here, right?
Hmm.
Anything, right? Like I don't know enough about tarot and tarot cards and how they work
Hmm.
really be able to follow all of what they're doing. I'm positive that there's some really deep, really dope kind of cuts in terms of like how they're setting things up or whatever, but like I can't sit here and pretend that like
Right.
I know, you know what I mean? So I'm just probably like most people, just kind of trying to follow along with what they're saying and what they're saying the cards mean and
Hmm.
whatever. Um and they're like in trouble. It's not quite working out for them. Um and then we end up with Lilia and they're all dirty. Um so clearly they made it through the mud,
Hmm.
right? Like for whatever reason, whatever way it was done, Agatha, who, look, we talked about it before. It's like, well, you can't, maybe you just can't kill Agatha. She has this kind of immortal thing going on. So that would explain why she
Pulled
managed to
herself up.
climb back up or whatever. Um, Now that's kind of out the window. So that kind of messes that up for me. Um, Whatever. Um, but now we're getting ready to get into this ball of confusion jokes. Um, and eventually, I think it begins to make sense.
Hmm.
I still personally think it's difficult to follow, especially on a first watch through. Maybe on a second watch through, when you kind of already know what to expect and understand what's going on, it might be a little easier to follow. But I do think that it is, again, purposefully confusing.
Hmm.
Um and I have to give some like credence to just the idea of shooting things the way they're doing and kind of handling things out of order.
Hmm.
That takes some serious planning and some real thought and so forth. And um there are certain things that happen throughout the episode that I think really are, again, well thought out and really smart. So having this castle not turn them into people from a particular time period, which has been what has happened in every other trial. They walk in and now they're from a different time period. It's the 80s, it's the 70s, it's
Hmm.
different clothing. In this case, we're going fictional, right? We're doing witches and we're going fictional. Agatha literally becomes the green wicked witch of the West.
Hmm.
Billy literally turns into Maleficent
Yep.
and loves it. Like is all about it. Um it's interesting for them to go that route, that we're not even really like pulling witches from the same story. We are pulling witches from fantasy. But that you hear Agatha say, "Oh, she was based on me, right?" Like this
Uh,
is
that was funny.
um now as we're starting to see like Lilia go through this whole like back and forth and you know like and we're beginning to gain, I guess, an understanding of like what has been happening to her throughout the series, throughout the
Hmm.
episodes. Um, is it starting to fall in place for you, like right away? Like I know you said about halfway through, and I mean, really, it kind of happens halfway through. But like, is it starting to fall in place for you, or are you still kind of like, I ain't sure?
Still piecing a little bit because like I'm starting to still like I said a while back, I was like, okay, does she have like split personalities? One person's coming to the light and then someone's going to the back. And at first I was like, okay, she is shifting back and forward. I was still thinking that it was somebody else that was in her body and that we were seeing and we were going to it. But then as we start to slowly get the idea of time becoming a piece of this, I'm like, oh, so okay, it's not another person that's slipping there. So now this is where I'm like, okay, idea out the window. Now I am a little bit confused on what's going on. Because normally with anything, I wouldn't say anything, but with certain time things, we normally have some type of catalyst that we'll know of to be like, oh, you're slipping in between future, present, past, whatever it may be. But this was kind of just, her powers, and we start getting the answers and those answers to what it was we were trying to figure out. But I would say I got a little more confused after we kind of realized that okay, you don't have split personality, and I was like, okay, let me just take this in a little bit more here.
Had you were you under the impression that she had split personalities or something prior to this episode?
I had
I
just
still didn't get
just just from her, those random outbursts, like I was
that.
like, okay, is someone, here getting part of whatever's being spoken, and then maybe when we doing the switch, it's either you're picking up from wherever the last place that you were, and so it kind of was just, super out of place. So for me, it was just kind of like, okay, you got a second person that's flip flopping between at certain points, and there's not really an on off switch. It just happens at random.
Yeah, I mean, I think what kind of was messing me up was like her making statements and then having someone else say to her, "Well, I already know that. How do you know that? Because you told me, right?" And so, like, seeing that at some point, she always seems completely out of control of what's
Hmm.
happening to her when it's happening, and sort of slowly seeing her gain control over it as
Hmm.
she starts to like accept what she is and who she is and not like run from what her abilities are.
Hmm.
um that fear of her abilities that was caused by, in this backstory that we get from her successfully being able to predict the death of her original coven,
Hmm.
right? That everybody was going to get sick and everybody was going to die, and being right about it. And then, being ostracized from her own coven, by it. But of course, her coven died, right? So,
Hmm.
um, she is the person who has been the most resistant to her own powers and abilities, and is the most like in the like second or third episode, I guess third episode, when they get to the witch's road and they go to the first trial.
Hmm.
She's the one who sits down and starts to drink the wine, the poison wine, and says like, you don't see any witches with pointy noses and warts and green skin here.
Hmm.
No sir, not like she has this need within her to push back against the personifications of witches, the way that witches have been portrayed, the
Proceed. Hmm.
portrayals of witches throughout time, that's not who we are, that's not what we look like, that's not how it works, we don't do this, that, and the third. She's kind of got that in her. And then in this episode, they literally dress her up as Glinda the Good Witch from the Wizard of Oz. Like she like this episode literally puts them in costumes and makeup that literally mimic the ways, all of the
Mm-hmm.
ways that she's pushing back against.
Mm-hmm.
This is what witches are. This is how they look. Old and crotchety and hunched over, or green with warts and a big nose, or whatever those things are. Evil and brooding, and you know, all of those things are things that she has worked to. I don't know if she really worked, but is against. And the portrayal or personification of them in that way. And then in this trial, the trial just like, nah, dog, you all of that. Y'all are all of that. You know what I mean? Um, and as she's going through I guess we'll call them the trials, we're seeing her as a young
Mm-hmm.
child getting some schooling, but it also appears to be happening in like real time. I don't know, dog. It was kind of
Right now, it was a little way. I'm like, because we're talking about it, and it's like I was like, okay, are you aging backwards, or what's happening here? Because like you're younger, you kind of know what's going on. I'm like, what?
in my head. What's happening is she is flashing back to moments that she recalled,
Mm-hmm.
like as a child having a conversation with someone. She's having these moments where she's seeing the future,
Mm-hmm.
right? Time is a flat circle kind of thing, right? And like she is recalling actually having seen these moments. It's almost like a weird version of deja vu. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Do you experience deja vu jokes? Is that a thing for you?
I feel like this happened at points. I feel like it's not one of those because it's like where you just sit is like, wait, didn't I need to do this already, or didn't like? I feel like it's one of those random. It's not an all the time type of thing. Like you
Sure.
probably do it, and it's almost like more forgetful. Maybe that's the way to really say that what it is.
You just confused me, dog. Like I was rewatching
I
this episode. Have you ever experienced deja vu, dog? Like, like
I feel like yes. I feel like yes.
feel like yes. You're not sure. You've never had a moment where you're walking or you're doing something, you're talking, and you go, "I saw this before. This happened to me already once," or whatever. It was in a dream. I remember. Like that's never happened to you. You're
Definitely the
not.
dream. Yes, I would definitely say the dream side. Yes.
That's what deja vu is. Okay, wait. Like you can say I don't know what deja vu is because
No,
that's
I know what deja vu. No, I definitely know what it is.
all right. So then, all right. So again, I'm now more confused than I was when we started. But you have experienced deja vu. That is where we are. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Excellent. I experience deja vu all the time. So it seems to me that like something about the way that her ability works
Mm-hmm.
um is almost like a version of deja vu, but she's like awake when it's
Mm-hmm.
happening, and it snaps her mind and her body into the actual moment,
Mm-hmm.
and she reacts to the actual moment out loud, right? It's almost like her deja vu has Tourette's. Like it's just like, does that make sense? Like that's
That's a good.
you
I
know what
think
I'm
that's a good way to say it.
so I feel like um what's happening to her is it's almost like when a person has deja vu and they really begin to recognize, oh, I'm having deja vu. I remember this. It was in my dream and this is what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And you maybe are good enough to successfully predict the next thing. That's kind of what's happening to her in this episode. It's all beginning to click. And she's remembering back literally hundreds of years ago to her youth and things that she saw in the future literally
Mm-hmm.
happening right then at that moment, right? And then it's beginning to realize, like, oh, we gotta go find, we gotta look for the bookshelf. We gotta go find
Mhm.
the bookshelf. And says it to her, and it's like, I'm not gonna remember telling you this in a minute. So like, it just hold tight. But then also having a need to, she kind of pushed off the idea of being in a coven and having a coven and so forth because she had a bad experience,
Mhm.
right? Predicted that her whole coven was going to die, and they did, and she's persecuted for it or whatever. Um, Now she has to accept that she needs a coven, that
Mhm.
she has a coven, and that these are her people. And so when she says to Jen, like, hey, you could go that way toward that subway, right? They get to this point, they're hiding from the Salem 7, they see the subway. I guess that's the way out. Yeah, you could bounce, but I gotta go this way. They need me, they need my help. This is my trial. I need to complete it. And I would really, really hope that you would stay by my side to do this. Um, she's got an out, but she also has already completed her trial.
Mhm.
Um, Doesn't mean she's not gonna die in this one though. Like, people have died in trials that were not theirs in this show. But she says, "All right, I got you. I'm with you." So that's what they do, and they go and they get there, and then even when she gets there, it still is like, "I bet, Tommy, we gotta find. I mean, Billy, we gotta find out what's going on with you. We need you to
Mhm.
sit down. Clearly, you're the person." They start to remember. They have their conversation about, "Are you the person who, put the
Put the
spell on
sigil.
me, the sigil on me?" And she's like, "Yeah, yeah, but it was because I saw what was going to happen, and I
Yeah.
knew that you were going to need to be protected or safe or whatever until the right time." Um, and they think it's they go at it again like it's Billy. Like, all right,
Mhm.
let's do your thing. That doesn't work out so good,
Nope.
does it?
Sword's still falling through, falling down. It's getting worse.
Swords are falling and the ceiling is lowering. It's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure. Um, and then realizing, okay, nope, I'm the traveler. I'm the person. It's me. Because she is. She's technically time traveling, right? Back and forth to all these different moments, seeing all these things or whatever. And now it's really starting to make sense to me.
Mhm.
Now it was kind of starting to click. Like, oh, all right, I got you. You're moving back and forth, or whatever in time and seeing the young you, the old you,
Mhm.
these different versions of you, these moments where she's done these things earlier in the show and said these things, and we don't know what she's talking about or why she's saying them. And then we just kind of ignore them, like, all right, she's just kooky,
Crazy.
or whatever. No, she's not, so to speak. And she begins to do her reading, and everything is making sense.
Hey, dog. Every time she started putting one of those cards down and was saying the moment, I'm just like, hey, hold on a damn minute here. And them pieces were just falling into places you go. I'm like, oh shit, what is happening here right now?
What do you mean, though? What do you mean?
No,
What were you
just the
surprised
fact of how it was just making sense, like putting the pieces and having each card obviously be a part of her and explain like each card was essentially one of the members of the coven that she was going through and saying each one of their parts for it,
about?
and
Yeah.
it was just this connection that was starting to go back to the beginning of the series where she came in, and we're kind of getting up to this point now. It's just like it, stuff is just being sewn together now, and it's coming together very nicely with some of this stuff.
It's good writing, bro.
Very much
It's
so.
really good writing that expands beyond the individual episode into the entire series, which is what has made so much of the MCU so good for so long, was the way that things were tied back to something that, like, one little thing somebody said 6 movies ago. You know what I'm saying? Like, and then you're just like, oh man, who wrote this? You know what I'm saying? Like, who did this? Yeah, it's extremely well written. Um, to really be able to like kind of put all those things in perspective and have all of these pieces that are laid out like literally right in front of you, but you
Hmm.
can't see why or what they're for.
Right.
And then they get revealed to you over time as the episodes kick in. It's just it's impeccable writing. It's really solid writing. The kind of writing that has me that makes me go, oh, they got big plans.
Hmm.
Again, my whole thing about this series, about this show, has been like, what's the point? What are we
Hmm.
doing with the greater MCU? What is happening? So we kind of have to talk about what it is they're going after, what this final card is, the idea of Billy looking for Tommy. Are we gonna see Tommy by the end of this season? Jokes? Is he
There's a
gonna
part of
find
me.
Tommy?
There's a part of me that doesn't think he's gonna find Tommy at the end. Like I
So
feel like.
let me just hold on. I'm gonna interrupt you because here's the thing. The whole point
Hmm.
of going down the Riches Road is to find the thing he's missing or that he's
Hmm.
looking for. And if we get to the end of the Witch's Road and what he finds is not Tommy, then what is it? What is it he's looking for? Does he find his daddy? Is it White Vision? Does he find his daddy? Is it Mephisto? Does he find his mama? Is it Wanda and she ain't dead?
You know, I'm
Because
I'm
I feel like
torn.
everybody's going to get something at the end of the road if they survive
Right.
to the end of the road.
Right. Like
What
I
is he going to
feel
find if it ain't Tommy?
like obviously Wanda was initial first thought. It's like, okay, one of them's gonna show up to kind of explain. I hope, well, I don't want to say I hope, but it ends up being, I don't want to say a cop out, but he ends up getting to the end of the road and more or less comes about him finding himself. Almost as kind of what I'm thinking this is. Yeah, I know.
I hate
Because
that,
he's,
but okay.
yeah, like I feel like it's gonna become something like that, like him going through all of this to truly understand and know who he is. You know, maybe he'll have his powers, you know, fully back by the time this because he's gonna know what he really is. But I almost feel like that's where we're leading to. But I kind of hope not, because I feel like that for me, like drops points down a little bit if that ends up being what it is for it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how I kind of feel right that that's where this is all leading to, just him discovering and figure out truly who Billy is what I think that there is what this is leaning towards.
Okay. Does Agatha survive to the end of the road?
I think she does.
So then what does she find at the end of the road that she's looking for? Does she get her powers back? Like, is the dark hold at the end of the road? Like, what does she find? Is it peace? Does she find her old coven? Like, what is it that she gets at the end of this?
Agatha's is little. Only thing I was thinking about, because once we really truly learn about death and the Rio situation, is that maybe somehow, I don't know if they like Rio somehow is at the end of the road. I almost feel like for her, just with the interactions that she's had with death, kind of, and I feel like that's what was kind of breaking things apart to really seem like if it was truly real with the relationship that they had. And I don't know, maybe this will be like that closure for her. Maybe,
Well, does she find Nicholas Scratch? Does she find her son?
I don't think she's gonna find us since we heard her son's voice during her trial, which makes it seem like that he's dead for real. For real, I don't feel like she's gonna find her son at the end of the Witch's Road.
So here's my thing: is there a possibility that, well, clearly it's possible, but like, all right, so like at the end of WandaVision, at the end of Doctor Strange, at the end of Doctor Strange, we hear no WandaVision. She's studying the dark hole. We hear
Mm-hmm.
the kids, both voices,
Mm-hmm.
like asking for help, screaming for help, right? And in in the episode where we dealt with Agatha's past and we heard Nicholas Scratch talk to his mom, right? That voice is similar, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
kind of a voice that's in the background, kind of floaty and ghosty in the air. We discussed thinking that maybe what she did was she had to give up Nicholas for some reason, try to get the Darkhold maybe so she could, maybe she wanted the Darkhold so she could bring Nicholas back to life. Maybe Death
Mm-hmm.
collected Nicholas. Maybe she made a deal with Death for some reason, with Rio for some reason, in order to try to, offset the fact that she had to give up Death. Maybe gave up her son. Maybe she gave up her son to Mephisto
Mm-hmm.
to try to get the Darkhold or whatever. Is there a possibility that if Billy's soul could quote unquote end up in William, could Tommy's have ended up in Nicholas Scratch?
Ooh, I didn't think about
And
that.
that when
That
they get to the end of the road, it turns out they're looking for the same person, but the same person is no longer the person
just
that they think that person is supposed to be. You know what I'm saying?
ooh.
Like in the same way that Billy's like, who am I? Like he asked, am I Billy or am I William? Like which
Mm-hmm.
person am I? William's body, Billy's soul and abilities is, are they going to get to the end of the road together? These two people, her who has this complete thing against the Scarlet Witch and hating
Mm-hmm.
Wanda and whatever, but also babysat the child of the Scarlet Witch, right?
Mm-hmm.
But who also has given up a child of her own in some manner and is looking
Mm-hmm.
for that child at the end, and even almost saw her own child in Billy,
Mm-hmm.
right? In a moment when like Rio had to tell her, like, that kid's not yours.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Tells me, okay, she's looking for her kid. The idea that they get to the end of the road and they're looking for the same person, and that maybe it's Nicholas Scratch's body and it's Tommy's soul, and that they're the same, and like that, to me, that would be crazy, but it makes so much sense
It
if they
makes
can pull
sense,
that off.
especially
Because
if it ends up just being the two of them to make it to the end. Because like, if only the two of them came to that last part, and Tommy slash Nicholas was standing there,
right.
that that would make perfect sense.
Well, what it says to me, based on what we've already seen, is that they're doing episodes 8 and 9 together.
Mm-hmm.
Episode 8 would have to be Billy's trial.
Right.
Would have to be. Now, whether it's William's trial versus Billy's trial or whatever, I don't, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. But I would imagine that it has to be his trial and that they have to get through it somehow together because they've done everybody else's trial.
So facts.
Right?
And I'm
So,
guessing possibly maybe because the idea originally, obviously, Rio would have been the Green Witch, and maybe I'm guessing this is where we see Death maybe show back up, and maybe they go kind of like, oh, this is actually Death's trial to do whatever. But like you said, it ends up really being Billy slash Williams' trial to get this through. I feel like they're gonna probably have one last interaction before either we get to that last episode.
yeah, I mean, there was no trial for Mrs. Hart,
Mm-hmm.
right? Who would have been the Green Witch. So, there is still technically, if that's how it works, a Green Witch trial to be had for Rio. And again, we did not get an answer for where she is. They asked,
They did.
and we didn't get an answer. So we did get a definitive answer about who she is, but we did not get an answer about where she is, right? Um, and maybe the deal that they made was that Agatha would continuously provide bodies for death over time because she maybe did something to keep Nicholas from dying or saved his soul
Mm-hmm.
or something like that. So I think there's a possibility. I think there's something else that's more important though that we have to discuss. And that's the credits to this episode. Now look, we've talked about how the show is ended and songs playing at the end of it. Billie Eilish used to see me in a crown, how big of a deal that is. That was about Billie. Do you remember what they played at the end of this episode?
I don't.
So they played this song called Time in a Bottle.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very slow song.
Mm-hmm.
All right. That exact same song is the song that plays in the X-Men movie where Quicksilver is running through the kitchen in slow motion and moving all the stuff around. It's the same song. Uncover your face, dog. It's the same song. And he just said, we know he's looking for his brother.
Uh-huh.
So the question is, and we've seen Ralph Boner in this show, who is
Oh.
the same person who played Quicksilver in the X-Men universe. And it was weird to me that in WandaVision, they brought him over to be Wanda's brother instead of bringing the person who played Pietro, who's now Craven the Hunter. But like, instead of pulling him over and letting him play the role, they pulled Evan Peters over to play the role. Again, it could just be all messing around or whatever. But there's a reason why, in my opinion, again, now that we're connecting the X-Men universes
Mm-hmm.
and the MCU together, even though they take
This
place in their own timeline, is
this
it possible, right, that Tommy's spirit ended up in another multiverse, like isn't here, and they're going to find something with that at the end of the Witch's Road, that the Witch's Road actually leads somewhere into the multiverse, and you see something. Because, bro, don't play, like, why would you, of all the songs you could pick,
why would you damn now I didn't
of all the songs you could pick, there's so many songs, bro, about time in some way, bro. There's a band called The Time, bro. You could have played any of
mm-hmm.
their joints, dog. Of all the songs you could have picked, why do you pick the song that's the exact same song as the song that plays the first time they were rescuing Magneto, right?
Mm-hmm.
In that movie, and he just like takes off and punishes everybody, just moving real slow and pushing things in front of people and moving bullets out of the way or whatever. Same song for Quicksilver, who is basically who Tommy embodies as
Mm-hmm.
the children of them. Like, they play too much, dog. They play too much. And I feel like somebody made a decision.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like somebody made a decision. Like, I'm a little bit, I don't know, bro. I don't know. Right now, this show is winning. Like, it's not even necessarily like the individual things that happen in any show. It's like the way that each episode is beginning to pile on things
Mm-hmm.
and then make you like, all right, where we going from here? What we about to do next? You know what I mean? Um, yeah, dog. I'm here for it. I want to know.
Agreed.
I want to know what other people think. Like, what is at the end of the road for all of them? And like, let's say Jennifer actually makes it, survives to the end of the road. Like, what does she get? Is she just getting her power back? Is that it? Does she find out how it is that somebody who didn't have magic was able to like bind her
Right.
magic was she ever actually bound? Like, you know, her pulling the joint and flipping the card at the end, man, and flipping the whole room and
Hey,
killing off.
listen.
Like, she didn't kill all of them. All of them were not in that room.
Mm-hmm.
There's like 2 or 3 of them that are left. I had to go back and look at it, but I know that they all did not die when she flipped that room over. But that joint was clean.
That whole entire thing was clean. Like, and the thing, like when the jump just started shifting and turned up, I was just like, at that moment, I was like, oh, can you? After they get shish kebab, I was like, can you just flip the card?
Get the card back, bro.
I was like, can you just flip the card back and so things will be fine? And I was like, oh,
Nah, but when she said before that, like, she was falling,
falling. I was,
nothing else happens after. It was like, clearly that's what it is. And, and I guess it was just one of those things where it's like she's lived long enough, she's seen enough. She finally is like having a satisfactory moment, got her coven, and she can be free.
it was an excellent. It was an excellent way to go out. Like, as much, she saved them, got it. Like, the moment she pushed Jennifer through and then shut the doors, I was just like, damn. It was just.
I mean, I like that Jennifer was like, I'm not going before you. You got to go.
Mm-hmm.
She was like, nah, you gotta bounce. She been like the most. Yeah, dog, I'm about me. I'm taking care of me. Like, and it was time to leave the other trial. She was the first one to bounce.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, when they were fighting the demons or whatever. Again, I wasn't a big fan of that episode. She was like, I ain't leaving this circle.
This circle.
Play all that music if you want to. I ain't worried about
Give
y'all.
me the triangle, and I will stand here in a circle with the triangle.
Stand in this circle right here. That's who she was, and in this case, she was like, I'm not leaving before you. You know what I mean? So something has shifted with her there. When she got asked, hey, look, you could go, you could leave, but I really hope you would stay by my side for this. With my, as part of my coven. She was like, all right. You know what I mean? I think that solidified them for real, like, as a coven. Like, that was the moment, making the decision to be like, all right, I'm all in. Let's do it. Which I thought was pretty dope. I'm very bought in to what is going to be at the end of the road and what's going to happen, and like, do we have a big bad? You know what I mean? Or whatever.
Thing,
like,
right.
How do we resolve what's going on, and how does it lead into, like, we know we have a new show. We know we have Vision Quest about White Vision. How is this tied into that? Right. We know that there's stuff with Secret War and Battle World and Doctor Doom. How is this tied into that? Right. And could it be that at the end of the road, it's just like, nah, here's your team. Here's the other younger men.
Hey, listen.
Your people. You know what I mean? This is what you've been looking for, and we'll go help you find your brother or whatever.
That would be an excellent little setup to maybe get that one team, and then we don't talk about it for a little while. We know where it's going to, and we just leave it at that for a little while. That would make this series super great if we got something like that. It's not going to.
There's no way that's happening.
But,
yeah. There's no
way. But either way, this show is doing. I'm loving it.
I'm still at a solid 8 right now.
Agreed.
Agreed. I'm still at a solid 8. Now, next week we get 2 episodes back to back. We get episodes 8 and 9 to complete it out, which to me is also a special thing. Like, I don't know why you do that. Why would you put both joints out together at the end? I get it when they do it in the beginning. This is a first for me. Like, we're going to do all that. We're going to drop both joints together at the end. Says to me there's something major. It's not, this ain't something slight. Something major is going to happen, and it's going to end on a cliffhanger that's going to be like, you got to watch the next joint right now. So I'm expecting big things. I'm just going to put it out there. I'm expecting big things, and I have a feeling based on what I've seen so far that they're going to deliver. They can drop the ball. I don't think that's going to happen.
Oh,
I'm at a solid 8.
This could be a 9. If they can stick this landing, this can easily be a 9 in the
It
books.
could. It really could. It really could climb to a 9, maybe even higher if they do it right.
Mm-hmm.
If they do it right. I don't have my expectations set that high. However, it's possible. All right, so look, we're gonna wrap it up here. This has been your spoiler boys for episode 7 of Agatha All Along. We will be back next time for episodes 8 and 9 together to discuss the
Mm-hmm.
finale of the show. So that one might be a little longer than normal. We'll see how it turns out. I want to thank y'all for hanging out, tuning in with us. For myself and Jokes, we're out. Toodles and lose.
Loading snacks.